The boarding gate fell silent the moment Madison Clark's voice cut through the air. "Ma'am, are you sure you belong in first class?" Her pale hand rested on her hip, the other pointing directly at Evelyn Carter's chest. Phones lifted. Cameras rolled. Whispers turned into a low hum. Evelyn, tall, poised, draped in a tailored navy suit, tilted her head slightly, eyes calm and unblinking. She didn't argue. She didn't smile. But the glint of a metal badge half hidden in her leather briefcase promised one thing. This humiliation was about to end in a way no one here could imagine. Madison Clark's voice dripped with a practiced sadame sweetness that barely masked the disdain curling at its edges. "This seat," she said, tilting her head and letting her eyes sweep slowly, deliberately over Evelyn Carter's body, "might be a little snug for someone of your proportions." The words hung in the air like smoke, curling through the boarding gate and into the ears of every passenger within range. One hand rested on Madison's hip, elbow flared like a challenge. The other extended forward, index finger pointing directly at Evelyn's chest. Her nails were a gleaming crimson, as if even her manicure had been sharpened for the occasion. The gate's ambient noise, the hum of boarding announcements, the occasional thump of a rolling suitcase, faded under the low murmur of curiosity. A man in line 2 spots behind Evelyn pulled out his phone. Another passenger, a teenager in a hoodie, already had TikTok Live running. The viewer count ticked steadily upward. The quiet hiss of whispers spread as heads turned to watch. Evelyn stood motionless, the perfect counterpoint to Madison's animated condescension. At 46, she carried herself with a kind of elegance that didn't need defending. Her tailored navy pantsuit fell in clean lines, each stitch speaking of quality and intention. A silk blouse, cream-colored, peeked from beneath the lapels. Her posture was flawless, shoulders back, chin level, her dark eyes calm and unblinking. She tilted her head slightly, a fraction of a degree. An unspoken, "Is that so?" that seemed to make the space between them hum. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply looked. Beneath her right arm, a sleek leather briefcase rested against her side. Its surface was immaculate, the kind of leather that drank in light and released it in a muted sheen. Just beneath the handle, where the flap's edge shifted slightly as she adjusted her grip, a faint metallic gleam caught the gate's fluorescent light. It was only visible for a second, and to most people it would be nothing, a decorative plate perhaps. But it was a badge, a piece of metal not meant for public display, its embossed seal partially obscured by the strap. Madison didn't notice. She was too busy scanning the boarding pass Evelyn held between 2 fingers, the paper perfectly straight, as if ironed. "Are you certain you're in the correct boarding group, ma'am?" The ma'am was both syrup and knife, dripping with forced politeness while slicing through the air. "First-class passengers expect a certain standard." The man with the phone inched closer, angling for a better shot. Somewhere behind him, a voice whispered, "Oh, she didn't just say that." A ripple of laughter, half disbelief, half schadenfreude, ran through the small crowd forming around the gate entrance. Evelyn's gaze didn't shift, not even to the camera phones now pointed at her from 2 directions. "I'm certain," she said, her voice low but carrying, each syllable as precise as her tailoring. No edge, no heat, just certainty. If Madison had been listening instead of performing, she might have heard the quiet authority beneath those 2 words. But Madison pressed on. "Let me just double-check your ticket. Company policy." She extended her hand like a queen expecting tribute. Evelyn didn't flinch. She placed the ticket in Madison's palm without breaking eye contact. Madison glanced at it, lips pursing. And then, whether from real suspicion or the desire to extend her stage time, held it up to the overhead lights, rotating it as though a hidden flaw might reveal itself under interrogation. Madison's tone was almost theatrical. "Seat 2A. She let the words hang, eyes narrowing in mock consideration. "Interesting." She turned to her left, catching the attention of a tall man in a blazer. "Robert, Bobby Lewis, the gate supervisor. "Bobby, could you come here a second? I think we might have a compliance situation." Bobby's brow furrowed, but he walked over. He had the heavy gait of someone used to being in charge of small territories and taking that authority seriously. "What's the issue?" Madison leaned closer, her stage whisper engineered to carry. "You know how particular our first-class customers can be. I just want to make sure everything here is legitimate." The teenager's live stream viewer count jumped. Comments poured in. "No way this is happening right now. She's profiling her, 100%. This is going viral." Evelyn remained exactly as she was, still centered. Her fingers shifted only once, adjusting the briefcase ever so slightly so that the corner of the hidden badge caught the light again. She glanced down at her watch, a subtle, elegant piece in brushed steel, and then back at Bobby, as though deciding whether the next 30 seconds would be worth her time. Bobby took the ticket from Madison, scanning it with the handheld reader. The green check blinked instantly, but he hesitated, glancing between the pass and Evelyn's face. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "tickets get mixed up. People use other people's accounts. It's important to verify identities." Phones around them lifted higher, emboldened by the escalating exchange. Chloe Bennett, the trainee standing a few feet away, tapped her tablet screen to start an official recording for training purposes. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes flicked from Madison to Evelyn and back, as though mentally cataloging each detail. Madison folded her arms, her gaze sweeping Evelyn once more, pausing deliberately at her shoulders, her waist, her hips. The pause was long enough for those watching to catch it, to understand exactly what was being judged. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside while we sort this out," Bobby said. His tone was calm, but carried the weight of authority he assumed wouldn't be challenged. Evelyn's only movement was to lift one eyebrow, slightly, almost imperceptibly. "Sort what out?" she asked. The words were velvet over steel. "This situation?" Madison said, her voice sharper now, sensing the crowd leaning in. "Our passengers have the right to feel comfortable. Safety and fit are important." The choice of words, fit, landed like a stone in a pond, sending ripples of murmurs through the onlookers. The teenager's live feed exploded with angry comments. Chloe's fingers hesitated over the record button, then resumed. She knew instinctively this would matter later. Through it all, Evelyn didn't break her gaze. The moment felt suspended, as though the air itself was holding its breath. And then, without a word, she shifted the briefcase slightly forward. The movement was so minor most missed it, but those closest could see the edge of a federal emblem glint again under the harsh boarding gate lights. She wasn't going to fight for her place here, not in the way Madison expected. She was going to let Madison keep talking, keep digging, keep playing to the crowd. Because somewhere in that leather briefcase was the end of this entire performance, and when it came, it would fall like a gavel. For now, she stood in her navy armor of silk and wool, head slightly tilted, eyes steady, letting Madison write the opening chapter of a story that would end far above her pay grade. Bobby Lewis adjusted the sleeves of his navy blazer as he stepped closer, the handheld ticket scanner already in his palm. His face was composed into the kind of neutral mask people in his position wore when they wanted to seem professional. But there was something in his eyes, just enough narrowing, just enough sidelong glance, that betrayed a quiet suspicion. "Let me see that pass again," Bobby said, his tone measured but with an undercurrent that suggested this wasn't just a routine check. He held out his hand. Madison placed the boarding pass in it with a flourish, as if presenting Exhibit A in a case she was certain she'd win. Evelyn handed it over without breaking eye contact, the subtle clink of her briefcase's metal clasp the only sound she made. Bobby glanced at the ticket, then back at Evelyn, then at the ticket again, deliberately, almost theatrically. The scanner beeped green instantly, but he didn't hand it back. Instead, he frowned slightly, as though a mystery were forming in his mind. "You know," Bobby began, loud enough for those gathered to hear, We've had issues before with people using accounts or upgrades that aren't theirs. Company policy says we have to verify, just to make sure everything checks out." The words hung in the air. A few heads in the surrounding crowd tilted, curious. Others shook minutely, reading between the lines. The teenager's phone feed was alive with comments now. "He's acting like she stole it. This is racial profiling 101. Watch, she's not gonna lose her cool. That's power." Madison, standing just to Bobby's side, folded her arms again and smiled thinly. "It's really just about making sure our first-class passengers have the experience they're paying for," she said, her tone sweet and cutting all at once. "You can imagine how upset someone might be if standards aren't met." The implication was like a shard of glass slipped under the skin, barely visible, but it cut just the same. Around them, a few passengers exchanged looks of disbelief. One woman in a floral scarf whispered to her husband, "She's saying she doesn't belong here." Evelyn remained still. She didn't tilt her head this time, didn't shift her weight. Her eyes were steady, locked on Bobby, as if she were quietly evaluating him the way one might study an entry in a file. The faint reflection of the gate's fluorescent lights shimmered in her dark irises. From behind Madison, Chloe Bennett moved subtly, her tablet angled toward the scene. She tapped the record button. Officially, it was for training documentation, something her supervisors encouraged during passenger interaction scenarios. But Chloe's lips pressed together in a thin line, and her eyes betrayed a discomfort she couldn't mask. She knew the policy manuals backward and forward. This wasn't compliance. It was performance. Bobby turned the ticket over once more, as though hoping to find a flaw hiding in the cardstock. "Do you have a photo ID?" he asked finally. Evelyn reached slowly into her bag. Not the briefcase, but the slim clutch she carried in her left hand. Her movements were deliberate, unhurried, giving the crowd nothing to read as aggression or guilt. She withdrew a sleek black wallet, opened it, and revealed a driver's license. Bobby leaned in, scanning it quickly, then returned to the ticket again, his frown deepening as if a puzzle piece still refused to fit. Madison took the moment to pivot toward the nearest knot of passengers. "Sometimes these things just don't match up," she said to no one in particular, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "And it's our job to make sure everyone's safe and comfortable." "Safe?" A man in a gray hoodie muttered under his breath, but not quietly enough to avoid Chloe's ears. She caught the comment and noted it mentally, her fingers still hovering over the record controls. She zoomed in slightly on Madison's stance, hips cocked, chin lifted, one brow arched in a way that broadcast judgment more loudly than her words. The teenager's live stream viewer count doubled in less than a minute. Comments scrolled so fast they blurred. "She's being humiliated in public for no reason. They're stalling her on purpose. This is gonna blow up. Mark my words." Evelyn took her ID back, sliding it into the wallet with the same precision she'd removed it. "Are we finished?" she asked. Her tone was soft but clear, each word enunciated. It was the kind of voice that seemed to carry authority, not because it was raised, but because it was controlled. Bobby hesitated, looking to Madison as if for confirmation. Madison stepped closer, closing the gap between her and Evelyn by a fraction. "Not quite," she said, her voice a mix of honey and vinegar. "We still need to make sure the name on the reservation matches the account used for the purchase. Sometimes, friends or family members use miles or upgrades without the primary account holder being present." Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. The silence stretched long enough for a cough to echo from somewhere in the boarding line. She blinked once, slowly, then shifted her briefcase against her leg. The motion was casual, but again, the metallic badge hidden near the handle caught the light, sending a faint reflection onto the carpeted floor. Chloe noticed it this time, her eyes flicking down and then back up to Evelyn's face. But she said nothing. Madison kept talking, as if filling the space would keep control in her hands. "It's nothing personal, of course, just protocol." She smiled again, but it was the kind of smile that didn't touch the eyes. The crowd was growing, the boarding gate now a small amphitheater with Evelyn in the center. Faces peered over shoulders, phones angled high to catch every detail. Even those not recording were clearly invested. Whispers and small headshakes traveled like waves through the semicircle of onlookers. Evelyn remained where she was, letting the weight of the moment settle on everyone but herself. If Madison and Bobby wanted a performance, she would give them one, but it would be theirs, not hers. The silence after Madison's last comment seemed to amplify every click of a camera shutter, every electronic chime from the scanner, every muffled notification from a live stream viewer's phone. Bobby cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if you'll just step aside, I'll stand here," Evelyn said, cutting him off gently but firmly. The choice of words was deliberate. It wasn't no, it was a statement of fact. She would stand here. The ownership of space was hers. Madison blinked, momentarily thrown off, then recovered with a quick smirk. "As you wish. Just don't block the other passengers." Behind her, Chloe shifted her weight, torn between her role as a trainee and the knot in her stomach that told her she was witnessing something wrong. The recording continued, framing Evelyn perfectly in the center, Madison in profile, Bobby slightly behind. The three of them frozen in a tableau that, even without audio, told a clear story. From the corner of her eye, Evelyn saw the teenager raise a second phone, someone else's, and start recording from another angle. The redundancy was almost amusing. Almost. She adjusted her grip on the briefcase one more time, letting the movement be slow enough for anyone paying attention to catch that fleeting glint of metal. And then she looked past Madison and Bobby, her eyes sweeping the crowd for a heartbeat before returning to the two in front of her. Whatever was coming next, it would not come from raised voices or heated arguments. It would come from the simple, unshakable fact that she did not need to prove she belonged here. Not to them, not to anyone watching. And when that fact landed, it would land harder than any shouted retort ever could. The murmur of the crowd shifted into a sharper current as a voice crackled over Bobby's radio. "Gate B12, security to your location." The message was short, clipped, no room for interpretation. Within moments, a tall man in a dark blue airport security uniform stepped into the boarding area, scanning the scene with a practiced eye. Officer Daniel Ruiz moved with the steady stride of someone used to calming tense situations, his utility belt quiet except for the faint jingle of keys. His hair was close-cropped, his jaw set, and the ID clipped to his chest bore the dull polish of a badge that had seen thousands of confrontations. He came to a stop just short of the standoff between Evelyn and the two airline employees. "What's going on here?" Ruiz asked, his voice even, not yet picking sides. His gaze swept briefly over Madison, then Bobby, before settling on Evelyn. Madison spoke first, her tone immediately tilting toward alarm. "Officer, we have a potential ticket fraud situation. This passenger may be in a seat she's not entitled to, and there are concerns about passenger comfort and safety." Bobby nodded in agreement, adding, "We're just following protocol, but she's refusing to step aside so we can verify everything." Evelyn didn't move, didn't break eye contact with Ruiz. The space between them seemed to narrow, not physically, but in presence. Something in the way she stood, shoulders squared, chin level, stillness radiating out from her center, made him pause. His eyes locked with hers for a second longer than protocol required, and in that heartbeat he registered something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't arrogance. It was assurance. The kind of assurance that came from knowing you held more cards than anyone else at the table. Ruiz cleared his throat, shifting his weight. "Ma'am, could I see your identification, please?" he asked, the request polite but edged with formality. Evelyn reached into her clutch again, producing the same black wallet she had presented to Bobby minutes earlier. But this time, when she opened it, the motion revealed not only her driver's license, but a slim, laminated card tucked behind a transparent flap, its top edge marked with an official seal and faint holographic strip. Ruiz's gaze flickered there for just an instant before she closed the wallet and handed him only the license. He examined it, noting the name, Dr. Evelyn Carter, and the clean precision of the document. He handed it back. "Thank you," he said, his tone softening almost imperceptibly. Madison, sensing control slipping, stepped closer to Ruiz. "Officer, I've been doing this for years. I can spot fake documents from across the terminal. We have to be careful. It's for everyone's safety." Evelyn's phone buzzed in her other hand, the screen lighting briefly. She glanced down just long enough for the words FAA HQ, priority alert, to flash across it before the notification faded. It was a small detail, gone in a blink, but several in the crowd noticed. A man near the back whispered, "Did you see that? FAA something?" The teenager's camera caught it, and the comments erupted. "FAA HQ? Is she with the government? Oh, this just got interesting. Y'all, she's someone important. Watch." Ruiz caught the glance at her phone too, and a faint crease appeared between his brows. He turned slightly, as if to shield the conversation from the growing crowd. "Ma'am, is there any reason this needs to escalate? We can handle this quickly." Evelyn met his eyes again. "I'm sure we can," she said, voice low but carrying. She didn't elaborate, didn't need to. There was weight in the certainty of her tone. Behind them, Madison crossed her arms tighter, her frustration simmering. She addressed the onlookers now, her voice pitched just enough to draw them in. "We've had incidents before where people sneak into first class and then paying passengers complain. I'm just protecting the integrity of the cabin." The words sparked another ripple of murmurs, some agreeing, others clearly appalled. Chloe Bennett's tablet kept rolling, the red REC icon steady in the corner. Her eyes darted between Evelyn's composed stance, Ruiz's measured demeanor, and Madison's theatrical posturing. Bobby checked his scanner again, more out of habit than necessity. The green check blinked back at him like an accusation. "Officer," Madison pressed, "I think we should call for backup and have her removed from the boarding area until this is sorted." Ruiz didn't move. His gaze lingered on Evelyn for another beat before he responded. "Let's not jump to that just yet. I'd like to understand exactly what the concern is beyond appearance." The last word landed harder than he might have intended. Madison's cheeks flushed faintly. "It's about protocol," she insisted, her voice tightening. Evelyn's phone buzzed again. This time, she let the screen light fully, revealing just enough for the nearest passengers to catch the preview of a message. "Secure line open. Awaiting your call." She locked the screen with a gentle tap, sliding the phone into her briefcase. The subtle motion brought the edge of the federal emblem into the light once more. Ruiz's eyes flicked down, then up. He didn't comment. Not yet. From the far side of the gate, a boarding announcement tried to cut through the tension. "Ultramax Flight 447 to Washington, D.C., now boarding all first-class passengers." The irony was almost palpable. Evelyn took a half step forward, not toward Madison or Bobby, but toward the boarding lane itself. The movement caused Madison to shift defensively, her arms stretching out as if to block the path. "Not until we're done here," she said sharply. Ruiz's brow furrowed. "Ma'am, unless there's a specific violation, you can't prevent a ticketed passenger from boarding." "She's not verified," Madison snapped back. "She's verified," Bobby muttered reluctantly, eyes still on the scanner. The admission was quiet, but it didn't go unnoticed. The crowd's mood shifted. A few people began murmuring more audibly, the tone less curiosity now and more irritation. Some directed at Madison, some at the delay. The teenager's live feed captured it all. Ruiz's measured stance, Madison's rigid posture, Bobby's hesitation, and Evelyn's unwavering calm. Ruiz exhaled through his nose, making a decision. "We're not removing her. If there's a formal complaint, file it through corporate. But I'm not escalating this without cause." Madison's lips parted, her indignation visible. But Evelyn didn't give her the space to retort. She simply looked at Ruiz and said, "Thank you, officer," in that same controlled tone. Then, without looking at Madison, she added, "I'll wait to board." The phrase was innocuous on its face, but something in the delivery made it clear. Evelyn wasn't conceding ground. She was choosing her moment. Ruiz gave a small nod, stepping back but not leaving entirely. His eyes lingered on her for a second longer, as if silently acknowledging that he'd understood something the others hadn't. And in the crowd, the first ripples of speculation began to spread. They didn't know yet who Evelyn Carter was, but they knew instinctively that this was no ordinary passenger, and whatever was about to happen next would be worth staying to see. The crowd at Gate B12 had begun to settle into a restless rhythm. Phones held high, murmured commentary, sidelong glances at the boarding lane that still hadn't moved. Evelyn Carter remained in her place, a calm axis around which the tension revolved. Then, with an unhurried motion, she shifted her briefcase from one hand to the other and lowered it gently to the carpet beside her. The movement should have been unremarkable, but as the leather case tilted, the flap shifted just enough for a rectangular edge to slide into view. A laminated card, silver and deep blue, peered out from under the strap. Embossed letters glinted in the light. Federal Platinum Clearance. It wasn't the kind of card one bought or was casually issued. Even in a split-second glimpse, it carried the weight of restricted corridors, security gates that only opened for a rare few, and conversations held far from public ears. Chloe Bennett, still recording on her training tablet, caught the detail instantly. Her eyes widened a fraction, the recognition flashing like lightning across her expression before she schooled it back into neutrality. She knew what that credential meant. She also knew better than to say a word, not with Madison in full performance mode. Madison, oblivious to the card, was already squaring her shoulders and raising her voice for the benefit of the onlookers. "Officer, you see what I'm dealing with here? A passenger refusing to cooperate, refusing to follow simple verification. It's disruptive, and frankly, it's making others uncomfortable." The others in question didn't seem to agree. A few rolled their eyes. One man in business attire muttered, "I'm uncomfortable watching you." The teenager's live stream lit up with comments. "She's digging her own grave." "Federal clearance? Y'all saw that, right? Keep the camera steady. This is gold." Evelyn didn't acknowledge Madison. Instead, she crouched slightly, an elegant bend at the knees, and adjusted the clasp on her briefcase, sliding the platinum clearance card fully back into place. The action was smooth, intentional. Anyone paying attention could see she wasn't hiding it in a panic. She was simply returning it to its home. But for the handful of observers who'd caught that glimpse, the questions began to form. Who travels with that kind of clearance? Why would someone like that be here on this flight, in this scene? Madison took Evelyn's composure as defiance. "You can't just stand there looking at me like that. This is a public space. We have rules." Evelyn straightened, her gaze steady. "Yes," she said simply. "We do." Madison opened her mouth to retort, but Chloe's camera feed caught something else. A flicker of emotion in Evelyn's eyes, gone as quickly as it came. It wasn't anger. It was memory. 15 years earlier, the conference room at the Geneva International Trade Center had smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive perfume. Evelyn was 29 then, the most junior member of an American trade delegation. She had spent months preparing her presentation on logistics reforms, only to be stopped at the entrance by a uniformed Swiss attendant who looked her up and down and said, in English crisp enough to cut glass, "Support staff wait in the hall." The words had stung more than she'd expected. Her team lead had brushed past without comment, not correcting the man, not bringing her in. She'd stood there for the better part of an hour, watching other delegates, men in tailored suits, women in couture dresses, sweep past her into the air-conditioned chamber where deals were made. That day, she'd promised herself something. She would never again be mistaken for someone without a seat at the table. And if she saw it happen to someone else, she would be the one to open the door and hold it wide. The present came back into focus as Madison stepped forward, closing the gap between them. "We can't just let anyone into first class. You understand that, don't you?" Evelyn's voice was calm, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. "I understand more than you think." A murmur ran through the crowd. They could feel something under the surface now, something shifting. Chloe kept her tablet trained on the scene, capturing every frame. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the sense that she was recording the moment before a storm broke. Officer Ruiz, standing just to the side, had noticed the change too. His eyes flicked once to Evelyn's briefcase, then to her phone, which rested on top of it. He didn't comment, but his posture eased, less confrontational, more observant. He was no longer looking for a reason to remove her. He was waiting to see what she would do. Madison, missing all of it, pressed on. "If you'd just step aside, we could avoid making a scene." Evelyn's gaze held hers. "This scene," she said evenly, "wasn't made by me." The teenager with the live stream gasped audibly, his phone jerking slightly as he tried to type and film at once. The comments flooded. That line. She's flipping it back on her. This is about to go sideways for the flight attendant. Bobby Lewis, who had been silent for the last several minutes, shifted uncomfortably. He looked at Madison, then at the growing crowd, and for the first time seemed to question which side of the moment he was on. Evelyn bent again, this time to retrieve her phone. As she straightened, the lock screen lit up with a faint notification. "Secure channel active. FAA HQ." She tapped the side button to darken the display, but not before Chloe's recording caught it in full. For those watching on the live stream, the image was a jolt of electricity. In the scrolling comment thread, theories exploded. FAA HQ? She's government for sure. This is why she's not sweating it. They're messing with the wrong woman. Madison glanced toward the crowd, sensing the mood shifting but not understanding why. She doubled down. "We have a duty to protect our passengers, and that means making hard calls. Sometimes people don't like the answers." Evelyn's reply was almost conversational. "And sometimes," she said, "those calls come with consequences." The words were quiet enough that some in the back leaned forward, straining to hear. But the way Ruiz's eyebrows lifted ever so slightly told everyone within range that he'd heard her perfectly. In that instant, the boarding gate no longer felt like a point of entry to a plane. It felt like a stage, and the players were moving toward an inevitable reveal. The platinum clearance card, the FAA HQ notifications, the unshakable poise. These were not the hallmarks of a passenger caught sneaking into first class. They were the warning signs of someone who had the authority to end this scene on her terms. And the audience, whether standing at gate B12 or watching through a shaky phone screen halfway across the country, knew they were going to stay until the curtain fell. The hum of the gate area was thick now, almost tangible, like the air before a summer storm. Evelyn Carter stood at the center of it, motionless, her leather briefcase by her side, the crowd's restless energy orbiting her like static. Without a word, she reached for her phone. It was a slow, deliberate gesture. No fumbling, no hurry. She unlocked the device with her thumb and scrolled to a contact buried deep in her favorites. No name appeared on the screen, only a single black star icon against a white background. She tapped it once, lifted the phone to her ear, and waited. She didn't speak, not a syllable. She listened for a few seconds, her eyes fixed on the middle distance, as if she were looking through Madison Clark and Robert Lewis, through the gate itself, into some place far beyond their comprehension. Then she gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, and hung up. No one at gate B12 knew it, but 400 yards away in the Operations Command Center for Dulles International Airport, a green icon had just lit up on a secure monitor. A tone, sharp, distinct, unmistakable, pierced the low chatter of the ops floor. "Code 7, Federal Oversight, Gate Bravo 12, immediate protocol activation," an automated voice announced. 3 people in the room stood at once. One picked up a direct line to the TSA field office in the terminal. Another began pulling up security feeds for the gate. The third, a supervisor with 20 years in airport command, swore under his breath and typed a code into the network that rerouted all relevant communications through an encrypted channel. The chain reaction was immediate. The TSA liaison's phone buzzed. The FAA's regional security desk got an alert. In a conference room 2 floors up, A meeting on cargo manifest discrepancies stopped mid-sentence as the screen at the far end of the table flashed the words, "Federal presence, do not interfere." Back at the gate, none of that was visible to the passengers or to Madison and Bobby. All they saw was Evelyn lowering her phone back into her briefcase and standing exactly as she had before, her expression unchanged. "Who were you calling?" Madison asked, her tone sharp, trying to mask the unease that was starting to creep in. Evelyn didn't answer. "Ma'am, if you're not going to cooperate," Bobby began. She turned her head slightly, just enough to look at him, and said, "I already am." The line was quiet, calm, and utterly baffling to the two airline employees. But in the crowd, a few people began to feel a shift. They couldn't name it, but it was there, a faint current of expectation, a sense that the stillness wasn't submission. It was the kind of stillness that comes right before something moves very, very fast. The teenager's live stream comments lit up. What was that call? She didn't even say anything. WTF, yo, something's about to go down. Chloe Bennett's tablet stayed locked on Evelyn's profile. Chloe didn't know what Code 7 meant. She'd never heard of it, but she could tell that whatever Evelyn had done, it had changed something. The tension in Evelyn's shoulders had eased a fraction, like someone who'd just shifted a heavy load into someone else's hands. At the far end of the terminal, two plainclothes security agents left the operations hallway and began walking toward Gate B12, their pace steady but purposeful. They weren't rushing. They didn't need to. This wasn't a scramble. This was a deployment. Madison was still talking, filling the silence with procedural jargon and veiled insults. But fewer people were listening now. The audience was watching Evelyn. She stood there in her navy suit, her head tilted ever so slightly, one hand resting lightly on the handle of her briefcase. Her eyes didn't flinch when Madison's voice rose. She didn't shift her weight when Bobby leaned in. She didn't even blink when a boarding announcement for another flight crackled over the intercom behind her. What the crowd didn't know, and what Madison couldn't imagine, was that the nod Evelyn had given on that silent call had just set in motion a federal verification process that bypassed the airline entirely. Within minutes, her boarding pass and identification would be cross-checked against the Department of Homeland Security's secured databases, her travel clearance validated at a level no civilian employee could even access. The disruption Madison kept insisting on was already on its way to becoming Exhibit A in an internal compliance review. The first ripple hit when a uniformed gate agent from the other end of the concourse appeared and made a beeline for Bobby. She whispered something into his ear, her eyes flicking toward Evelyn twice in the span of a sentence. Bobby's posture stiffened. "What?" Madison demanded, her voice carrying over the heads of the nearest passengers. "It's nothing," Bobby said quickly, though his eyes betrayed him. He was watching Evelyn now with a different expression. Less suspicion, more calculation. "Nothing?" Madison scoffed. "We're in the middle of a—" Her voice cut off as a tall woman in a black blazer with a silver shield clipped to her lapel stepped into the gate area. Chief Angela Moore. Her presence was enough to draw a new kind of silence from the crowd. Not the quiet of curiosity, but the quiet of recognition. She didn't look at Madison. She didn't look at Bobby. She looked at Evelyn. And Evelyn simply nodded once in greeting. No words, no explanations. Angela's gaze swept the area, her eyes landing briefly on Chloe's recording tablet before moving on. "We'll take it from here," she said, her tone making it clear she wasn't asking permission. Madison bristled. "Chief, this is an airline matter." "No," Angela said, and there was nothing in her voice but authority. "It isn't." For the crowd, the moment was electric. They still didn't know exactly who Evelyn Carter was, but they knew she had just changed the entire power dynamic with a phone call and a nod. Madison's voice, so dominant minutes before, was now just background noise. The teenager's live stream surged past 10,000 viewers. Comments flew. "That's it. She's definitely somebody big. Chief Moore doesn't just show up for random disputes." Silent call, now this? Chills. And Evelyn? She stood in the same place she'd been for the last 20 minutes, calm and immovable. But now, the space around her felt different, charged, inevitable, like the first gust of wind before the rain starts. Whatever was coming next, the crowd knew they would see it unfold. And none of them, not Madison, not Bobby, not the thousands watching through their screens, could predict how far the ripples from that silent nod were about to spread. 4 miles away, in a corner office of Ultramax Airline's glass-clad headquarters, a secure phone buzzed on CEO Thomas Whitaker's desk. It wasn't the standard corporate line. It was the black one, the one reserved for federal communications and high-risk incidents. Whitaker, a man whose life had been reduced to quarterly earnings reports and investor calls, picked it up on the second ring. "Mr. Whitaker," a voice said, clipped and urgent. "We have a code 7 at Dulles, gate B12, VIP federal clearance involved. Possible compliance breach by your staff. This is now flagged at FAA oversight level." Whitaker's pen froze above the signature line of a contract he'd been about to sign. "Who?" "Name hasn't been officially released, but they're in possession of federal platinum clearance." The pen rolled off the desk as Whitaker stood. "Get me security on site, now, and patch me to our crisis team in 5 minutes." Within 60 seconds, an internal priority alert hit every senior director's inbox. "Urgent. Potential federal incident. Do not engage without clearance. CEO en route." Back at Gate B12, Chief Angela Moore had already arrived, flanked by 2 high-ranking TSA liaisons and an airport security detail in dark suits. Their presence drew a subtle shift in the crowd. Phones steadied. Conversations hushed. A sense of anticipation thickening in the air. Angela's eyes swept the space. Evelyn Carter standing serene in her navy suit. Madison Clark, animated and oblivious. Robert Lewis, uncomfortably quiet. And Officer Ruiz, now posted slightly behind Evelyn, almost as if guarding her. Angela moved forward, her steps measured. "Dr. Carter," she said. Her voice pitched for Evelyn alone, but audible enough to carry to those nearest. Evelyn inclined her head in greeting. "Chief." The exchange was brief, but it was enough to shift the axis of the scene. Chloe Bennett, still filming on her training tablet, caught the moment perfectly. The subtle nod of recognition between 2 women who clearly knew each other. The kind of acknowledgement that comes from shared professional territory. Madison's brow furrowed. "Chief Moore, with all respect, this is a routine boarding matter." Angela didn't break stride. "Ms. Clark, your routine matter is now a federal matter. Stand down." It was the first crack in Madison's armor. "I'm just following procedure." "Then your procedure needs reviewing," Angela replied flatly. A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. The teenager's live stream comment feed lit up. "Oh, she's in trouble now. Chief Moore just dunked on her. This is the beginning of the end for Madison." 2 concourses away, in the airport's crisis coordination room, the Code 7 alert had triggered a cascade. A red banner stretched across the top of the master display, cycling through key points. VIP federal clearance. Incident in progress. Gate B12. Observe Protocol 14B. FAA representatives on site were patched into the feed from Chloe's tablet. Yes, the same training video, now doubling as real-time documentation. In less than 10 minutes, the footage was being mirrored in the FAA's Washington, D.C. security hub, the Department of Transportation's oversight office, and a secure conference room in the Pentagon. For most of those watching remotely, the name Evelyn Carter was just a line on a manifest. For a few, however, the recognition was immediate, and so was the realization that this boarding matter had just become a compliance nightmare with national-level eyes on it. Madison still didn't see it. If anything, the attention seemed to embolden her. "Officer," she called toward Ruiz, "can you escort this passenger away from the gate until we've resolved this?" Ruiz didn't move. His glance toward Angela was quick, deferential. "Chief?" Angela's tone was steel. "No removal. This passenger is cleared to remain exactly where she is." Madison's smile tightened. "You can't just—" "I can," Angela said. And I just did." The burst of quiet laughter from a few passengers earned her a glare from Madison. But the tide of public opinion had already begun to turn. What had started as morbid curiosity was shifting toward a collective rooting interest. The teenagers' live stream viewers surged past 18,000. Comments scrolled like ticker tape. "Get the popcorn. She's not even sweating. Madison's toast." In the executive garage beneath Ultramax headquarters, Whitaker's black sedan pulled out with a squeal of tires. He wasn't the kind of CEO who made public appearances for gate disputes. But this wasn't a dispute anymore. This was a liability that could gut $1 billion federal contract. As he sped toward the airport, his assistant fed him details from the internal call. Passenger's name not officially confirmed, but likely a senior federal official. Live video from the scene is trending on multiple platforms. Potential breach of anti-discrimination compliance. Whitaker's jaw tightened. "By the time I arrive, I want legal, PR, and federal contracts all on site, and tell corporate security to be ready to lock down media access." Meanwhile, Angela was closing the physical gap between Evelyn and the boarding lane. She positioned herself at Evelyn's side, her body language a shield. Madison stepped back half a pace, the change almost imperceptible but deeply telling. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice carrying just enough to reach Madison and Bobby. "You're very committed to your interpretation of procedure," she said evenly. Madison bristled. "It's not interpretation, it's policy." "Policies," Evelyn replied, "are only as strong as the people applying them." A few audible "hmms" and low whistles came from the watching crowd. Even Bobby looked away, his eyes landing on the gate desk as if searching for something to do with his hands. Angela glanced at Evelyn, her mouth almost curling into a knowing smile. Whatever was about to happen, she knew Evelyn had already set it in motion. In the operations center, the feed from gate B12 was now one of 6 displayed on the critical incidents wall. A marker in the corner showed a 43% spike in negative social sentiment for Ultramax Airlines in the last 15 minutes. Analysts were already feeding that data to the corporate response team and to the FAA's compliance office. The chain reaction had begun, all from a silent phone call and a nod. Back in the gate area, Madison tried to recover it. She turned to the crowd, her voice pitched for them now. "We all want safe, comfortable travel, right? That's all I'm trying to ensure." It fell flat. No one clapped, no one murmured agreement. The only sound was the quiet whir of a camera lens refocusing on Evelyn's calm, unmoving face. The moment was starting to tilt, the balance of power shifting in ways Madison couldn't measure, but everyone else could feel it. They might not have known the exact content of that Code 7 federal oversight alert, but they could sense the storm gathering. And Evelyn Carter, standing at its calm center, looked like someone who had weathered storms far more dangerous than this. The boarding gate had become a stage, and every eye in the terminal seemed fixed on the woman in the navy suit. Evelyn Carter stood as she had for the past half hour, tall, composed, unreadable, while the tension coiled tighter. Chief Angela Moore stayed at her flank like a sentinel, her presence alone keeping Madison Clark's theatrics at bay. Then Evelyn moved. She crouched with the same deliberate calm she had shown all morning, unclasped the latches of her leather briefcase, and opened it with a quiet click. Inside was a stack of neatly arranged folders, their edges perfectly aligned, the topmost bound with a red security tape bearing the Federal Eagle seal. She slid the top folder out, placed it on the gate desk, and turned it toward Madison, Bobby, and the nearest cameras. The heading was impossible to miss. Federal Aviation Administration, Security Services Contract Agreement. Below, in bold print, annual value, $1,300,000. And beneath that, the signature line, Dr. Evelyn M. Carter, Deputy Director, Federal Aviation Security Administration. The air went still. It wasn't just that people stopped talking, it was as if the very hum of the terminal dimmed. Phones shifted in unison as every camera in the crowd tried to capture the same thing. The gleam of the embossed seal, the stark clarity of the contract's title, and that unmistakable signature in flowing ink. Madison's skin lost its flush in an instant. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The confident stance she had worn like armor began to collapse, her weight shifting awkwardly from one foot to the other. Bobby swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. He glanced at Madison, then at the document, then at Evelyn, as if hoping someone might tell him this wasn't real. From the teenager's live stream came an audible gasp. The comment feed exploded. "Holy, she's the signatory. 1.3 billion? She owns their federal contract." Chloe Bennett's tablet zoomed in instinctively. The crisp resolution captured every letter of the contract header, every glint of the gold foil FAA seal. She'd never seen Madison at a loss for words before, and now she was documenting it in high definition. Evelyn didn't look at the cameras. She looked at Madison. "This," she said evenly, tapping the page once with a manicured finger, "is the agreement your employer signed with the Federal Aviation Administration. It covers security services, compliance, and operational oversight for all Ultramax flights departing from U.S. airports." Her tone was not raised, yet each word landed with the precision of a hammer on glass. "In other words," she continued, "it governs the standards your company is obligated to meet, standards that include strict prohibitions against discriminatory treatment of passengers." Madison opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I didn't know." "No," Evelyn interrupted. "You didn't ask." A murmur of approval rippled through the onlookers. It was subtle, but it was the sound of the crowd aligning itself. They were no longer just witnesses. They were participants in a reckoning. Bobby cleared his throat. "Dr. Carter, Mr. Lewis?" Evelyn said, her gaze cutting to him. "How long have you worked here?" 12 years, he said automatically. "And in those 12 years, how many times have you intervened when a passenger was treated as though they did not belong?" Bobby's mouth opened, but no answer came. He looked down at the contract, then at the floor. Evelyn turned her attention back to Madison. "This contract is renewed annually," she said, her voice as steady as ever. "Each renewal is contingent upon documented compliance with federal anti-discrimination statutes. I am the authorizing officer for those renewals." The implication landed like a physical blow. Madison's knees bent slightly, her grip tightening on her clipboard. She seemed to be searching for the script she'd been following all morning, only to realize it was gone. From somewhere behind the crowd, a man in a suit muttered, "This is career-ending." The teenager's live stream echoed it seconds later in the comments. "She just ended her. This is the part in the movie where the villain realizes it's over." Evelyn didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice or smirk. She simply let the facts hang in the air, the weight of them pressing down until even Madison had to drop her gaze. Then, without fanfare, Evelyn picked up the folder, slid it back into her briefcase, and closed the latches with a soft click. The silence that followed was not the silence of uncertainty. It was the silence of inevitability. Angela Moore broke it. "This matter," she said to Madison and Bobby, "is concluded. Dr. Carter is boarding." But Evelyn didn't move toward the boarding lane. "Not yet." "We're not finished," she said softly, her voice carrying to the back of the semicircle of onlookers. "This was the public part." The crowd reacted instantly. Gasps, murmurs, the subtle shifting of weight as people realized the story they thought they'd been watching was only halfway told. Madison looked up at that, confusion etched across her features. "Public part?" Evelyn's eyes were calm, but there was an edge now, a glint that hinted at something deeper. "Yes, there's the part everyone sees," she said, gesturing faintly toward the phones raised in the crowd. "And the part that happens after." The teenager's live stream comments blew up. "After? What's after? She's not done yet. Madison better run." Evelyn reached into her briefcase again, not for the contract this time, but for a smaller folder, sealed with a blue ribbon. She didn't open it. She simply held it in one hand, the ribbon dangling loosely, and looked directly at Madison. "You'll learn soon enough," she said. Then she placed the folder back inside and stepped toward the boarding lane, Angela Moore falling into step beside her. The security detail adjusted position, creating a quiet corridor between Evelyn and the rest of the gate. The crowd didn't move. Phones stayed up. They wanted to capture every second of the walk to the scanner, every step that took Evelyn from the center of conflict to the threshold of resolution. Madison stood rooted to the spot, her clipboard hanging at her side. Bobby turned away, his eyes fixed on the ground. For the first time since the confrontation began, Evelyn smiled. Not wide, not gloating, but a small, private smile that spoke of plans already in motion. The curtain on the public act had just fallen, but for those who knew how these stories worked, the real play was only beginning. Chief Angela Moore didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. One glance at Madison Clark, one slight tilt of her head toward the side corridor, and the command was clear. "Ms. Clark," she said, her tone clipped and precise, "you will not be operating this flight. Please remove yourself from the aircraft boarding area immediately." Madison's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes darted toward Bobby Lewis, then to the crowd. It was as if she were searching for an ally who could step in, someone to vouch for her, but all she found were lenses and judgment. The teenagers' live stream audience swelled past 25,000 as comments poured in. "There it is. Bye, Madison." Chief Moore just fired her in real time. Justice served cold. Madison's clipboard wavered in her grip. I was just following." "Now," Angela said, her voice cutting through Madison's protest like a blade. Two members of the security detail stepped forward. Their presence was polite but undeniable, a silent wall that funneled Madison toward the service exit. Each step Madison took seemed to strip away a layer of the authority she'd been clinging to all morning. By the time she reached the threshold, her shoulders had rounded, her chin had dropped, and the last thing the cameras caught was her turning away from the terminal, her face half hidden by her hair. Bobby Lewis was next. "Mr. Lewis," Angela said, pivoting her gaze to him, "you are hereby relieved of duty, pending investigation into your conduct during this incident." Bobby's jaw dropped. "Chief, with respect, this is not a discussion," Angela interrupted. She gestured to a uniformed gate agent waiting just behind the desk. "Please take Mr. Lewis's access badge and escort him to the administrative office." The gate agent moved forward, holding out a hand. Bobby hesitated, then unpinned his badge from his blazer with a movement that was part resignation, part disbelief. A few passengers actually clapped, quietly at first, then more audibly as Bobby was led away. The teenager's phone trembled as its owner tried to keep up with the unfolding drama. "Both gone? In minutes?" Evelyn didn't even raise her voice. "This is surgical." For a moment, the gate area was suspended in a strange kind of satisfaction, an almost tangible relief that the immediate wrong had been addressed. But the satisfaction hadn't yet reached its peak, because there was one more player entering the scene. The click of polished shoes on tile announced him before the crowd saw him. Thomas Whitaker, CEO of Ultramax Airlines, stepped into view flanked by two senior executives and a man in a charcoal suit who was almost certainly from the legal department. Whitaker's presence was a performance in itself, an expensive gray suit that fit like it had been cut for him alone, a silk tie in the company's signature blue, and an expression finely tuned to convey concern without outright panic. His pace was brisk but not rushed. His eyes scanned the crowd before locking onto Evelyn Carter. "Dr. Carter," Whitaker said as he approached, extending a hand, "I want to offer my deepest apologies on behalf of Ultramax Airlines for the unacceptable treatment you've endured." Evelyn glanced at his hand, then at his face. Slowly, deliberately, she clasped it. "Mr. Whitaker?" The handshake was brief, businesslike, and, thanks to the dozens of phones recording, immortalized from every possible angle. Whitaker turned to the crowd, raising his voice just enough to carry. Ultramax holds itself to the highest standards of customer service and respect for every passenger. What occurred here today does not reflect our values, and we are taking immediate action to ensure it never happens again. The executives behind him nodded in sync, as if their agreement could somehow shore up the brand's collapsing public image. The crowd's response was polite but muted. A few passengers crossed their arms. The teenager's feed was ruthless. PR damage control incoming. Too late, buddy. Evelyn runs this now. Whitaker pivoted back to Evelyn. We hope to make amends. Our team will reach out to you directly to Mr. Whitaker, Evelyn said, her voice calm but cutting. This isn't over. The words landed like a crack of thunder. The crowd stilled. Cameras zoomed in. Whitaker blinked. I understand, and we're prepared to— You don't, Evelyn said, shaking her head faintly. What you've seen here, these terminations, these apologies, are the smallest part of what happens next. For a heartbeat, silence. Then a low, anticipatory murmur rippled through the onlookers. This was the moment they hadn't realized they were waiting for. The turn where a satisfying comeuppance might transform into something much larger. Evelyn reached into her briefcase and removed a slim folder sealed with a white band. She didn't open it, but she held it lightly in her left hand. This contains preliminary findings from a compliance review your company has been under for the past 6 months, she said. Findings that will now be updated with the events of this morning. Whitaker's posture stiffened. The man in the charcoal suit stepped forward slightly, but Evelyn's gaze cut to him and he stopped. These findings, she continued, will be presented to the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and the Congressional Oversight Committee on Aviation Security, and I will be making recommendations. A camera shutter clicked sharply from somewhere in the crowd. Angela Moore shifted subtly beside Evelyn, her presence radiating quiet support. Whitaker tried to recover, his tone smoothing into diplomacy. We take any recommendations seriously, Dr. Carter. We are committed to addressing— You'll have to be, Evelyn said, because as of this moment, your billion-dollar federal contract is in jeopardy. The teenager's live stream chat went ballistic. She said it. $1 billion. This is going to the government. Whitaker's jaw worked silently for a moment before he found words. We will do whatever it takes to maintain our partnership. Evelyn let the faintest curve touch her lips. Not a smile, exactly, but something that suggested she already knew the outcome. I know you will. She turned slightly, angling her body toward the boarding lane. Chief Moore, shall we? Angela gave a single nod. Let's board. As Evelyn began to walk, the crowd parted instinctively, phones following her every step. Whitaker remained where he was, the executives at his back, the weight of the scene settling onto his shoulders. Madison was gone. Bobby was gone. And now, his company's future was balanced on the quiet authority of the woman in the navy suit. The applause started softly, from a man in the second row of the crowd, then spread. Not loud, not raucous, but steady. A recognition of a wrong met with precision and poise. And as Evelyn crossed into the boarding tunnel, her final words still hung in the air. Not yet. By the time Evelyn Carter stepped into the narrow, carpeted jet bridge, the ripples she had set in motion had already begun to roar through the corporate and regulatory landscape. In the gate area, Thomas Whitaker remained standing, one hand tightening around the polished wood handle of his briefcase. His legal counsel leaned in, voice low. We have a problem, sir. She's not bluffing. Whitaker didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the spot where Evelyn had just disappeared, as if sheer willpower could call her back before the damage spread. But the damage was already airborne. 2 floors above the terminal in the airport's Crisis Coordination Center, a bank of screens displayed Chloe Bennett's training footage alongside real-time financial data. One chart in particular was blinking red. Ultramax Airlines, ULX, down 8.4% in last 17 minutes. The drop wasn't just from social media sentiment. Major institutional investors had begun selling off their positions after early alerts hinted at a federal compliance scandal. A scrolling news ticker on the financial network feed read, FAA Deputy Director involved in discrimination incident. Ultramax response pending. A compliance officer from the FAA's Washington office joined the secure call. Dr. Carter has already transmitted preliminary documentation, she said. It includes evidence of systemic violations of federal anti-discrimination statutes spanning at least 3 years. Her voice was steady, but the words hit like a hammer. On Wall Street, analysts who normally ignored midday gate disputes were drafting emergency advisories for clients. The most circulated memo came from a transport sector investment group. Preliminary findings indicate potential breach of Section 14.7 of FAA compliance agreements. The current contract with Ultramax represents 31% of annual revenue. Loss or suspension of this contract would have catastrophic implications for liquidity. Within minutes, financial bloggers and aviation industry forums were quoting the figure, 31% of revenue. It was the twist that made jaws drop. Not just a public relations crisis, not just a fine, but the kind of existential threat that could collapse an airline. Across the Atlantic, the International Air Transport Alliance was quietly contacting its member carriers. The message was neutral on its surface. Monitor developments with Ultramax Airlines and prepare contingency agreements. But every recipient understood what it meant. If Ultramax fell, others would move to claim its routes, code shares, and service contracts. Back in the jet bridge, Evelyn's steps were unhurried. Angela Moore walked beside her, her voice pitched low. You've got them rattled. Evelyn's expression didn't change. Good. They've had 3 years to correct their course. Instead, they buried complaints and blamed passengers. Angela exhaled slowly. You have the paper trail? Evelyn glanced at her briefcase. Every documented violation, every ignored settlement recommendation, every time they classified a discrimination complaint as a customer preference issue instead of a compliance breach. In Ultramax's executive war room, senior vice presidents crowded around a digital map of their operations. A red overlay marked every airport where federal contracts intersected with Ultramax services. One of them pointed to the largest cluster. If this goes the wrong way, we lose 31% of our business. That's before international partners start dropping us. The head of international relations added, we've already had calls from London and Doha asking if we're still viable for long-term code shares. Whitaker's phone buzzed. He glanced at the caller ID, Federal Contracts Division, FAA. His throat tightened. Put it on speaker. The voice on the other end was all business. Mr. Whitaker, this is a courtesy call to inform you that your current security services contract is under active review in light of new evidence. You will receive a formal request for a remediation plan within the hour. Whitaker's legal counsel cut in. We'll cooperate fully. Cooperation is assumed, the voice said. Compliance is not. The line went dead. On the trading floor, Ultramax's stock continued its free fall. Financial journalists were now framing it as a confidence collapse rather than a market correction. A viral chart compared the drop to other historic airline scandals, the headline screaming, "From first class to free fall, Ultramax plummets, 15 to 90 minutes." At Gate B12, passengers who had been part of the audience were now relaying the story in animated detail to those in boarding groups behind them. She just opened this folder. Boom! $1.3 billion contract with her signature, one man said, his hands spreading wide. You could see the color drain from that flight attendant's face. The teenager with the live stream was practically vibrating with energy. Guys, we're trending top 5 in the country. Hashtag #Carter Clause is everywhere. On board the aircraft, Evelyn settled into seat 2A, her briefcase tucked neatly under the seat in front of her. She powered on her phone, and within seconds, secure messages began pouring in. DOT oversight. Received documentation. Preparing joint task force briefing. FAA legal. Cross-referencing contract clauses with new evidence. Congressional committee staff. Please confirm your availability for next week's hearing. She read each one, then sent a single, succinct reply to all. Proceed. In London, a vice president from an Ultramax partner airline drafted a memo to their CEO. We should be prepared to withdraw from all shared routes if FAA contract is revoked. Recommend initiating talks with Delta and American to absorb capacity. In Doha, another partner began quietly rerouting cargo service inquiries. At Ultramax HQ, Whitaker's PR team tried to spin a holding statement. Ultramax Airlines is committed to the highest standards of respect, safety, and compliance. We are working closely with federal partners to address any concerns. The problem was, no one believed it. Every news outlet had the footage of Madison being removed, Bobby being stripped of his badge, and Whitaker himself looking visibly cornered in front of Evelyn Carter. Angela glanced out the aircraft window at the growing number of media vans pulling up to the terminal. They'll be waiting for you when we land. Evelyn's voice was calm. They can wait. I'm not speaking to the press until the FAA review is underway. This isn't about headlines. It's about the record. Angela studied her for a moment. You really think they could lose the contract? Evelyn's eyes didn't waver. If they don't meet the terms of remediation, they will. And if they do, it'll cost them more than they've ever budgeted for compliance. She leaned back, clasped her hands in her lap, and let the hum of the cabin settle around her. Outside, the Ultramax brand was bleeding value by the second. Inside, she was already thinking several moves ahead. For Evelyn Carter, this wasn't just a victory in a personal dispute. It was the opening salvo in a systemic reckoning. And for Ultramax Airlines, the fallout was no longer hypothetical. It was here. By the time Flight 447 taxied onto the runway, the story had already detonated across the internet. On Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and every news aggregator, the hashtag #SkyRights now was climbing so fast that algorithms couldn't keep up. What had started as a shaky vertical video from a teenager at Gate B12 was now being reposted by verified accounts, dissected by commentators, and overlaid with dramatic captions. One woman versus an airline. 1.3 billion reasons to know who you're talking to. The Carter Clause. In the span of an hour, the hashtag trended in the United States, Canada, and the UK. Exactly the demographic footprint of the FAA's largest passenger protection initiatives. By the next hour, it was trending in 42 countries. Cable news networks scrambled to reconfigure their evening lineups. CNN cut away from a pre-recorded segment on infrastructure to run the footage of Evelyn Carter placing the contract folder on the gate desk. MSNBC spliced in a freeze frame of Madison Clark's expression mid-realization, looping it for maximum effect. Even Fox News, which often approached federal oversight stories with skepticism, ran a headline that was impossible to misinterpret. Deputy FAA Director confronts airline over alleged discrimination. Contract in jeopardy. In Washington, reporters camped outside the Rayburn House office building began pressing lawmakers for comment. Senator Claudia Vega of New York didn't hesitate. We have been warning for years about systemic bias in air travel, she said into a dozen microphones. If even a federal official with full clearance can be treated this way, what does that mean for ordinary passengers? Her statement was clipped, polished, and almost instantly turned into shareable quote graphics on social media. But it wasn't Senator Vega's comment that set the conversation ablaze. That came from Senator Robert Langley of Colorado. In an unscripted moment, walking from his office to the Senate chamber, a reporter shouted a question. Senator, have you experienced anything like what happened to Dr. Carter? Langley stopped mid-stride, adjusted his glasses, and nodded. Yes. 2 years ago, flying back from a committee assignment, I was told, by this same airline, that my seat had been mistakenly assigned and moved to the back of the plane. It was humiliating, and I suspected bias at the time. I filed a complaint. I never received a response. The revelation was a spark to dry tinder. Newsrooms lit up. Senator alleges discrimination by Ultramax became the top headline on the Associated Press wire. Every major outlet picked it up. Cable hosts began drawing a through line from Langley's experience to Evelyn Carter's confrontation to the FAA's compliance investigations. In less than 3 hours, what had been a story about a single gate incident had ballooned into a national discussion on systemic discrimination in air travel. On social media, the hashtag splintered into related campaigns. #Passengers for Change. Passengers sharing personal stories of bias. #Carter Clause, focusing on the federal contract leverage Evelyn wielded. Ground Ultramax, a growing call for boycotts until reforms were implemented. TikTok was flooded with reaction videos, lawyers explaining the legal stakes, pilots describing the training gaps, and everyday travelers recounting eerily similar experiences. In the FAA's Public Affairs Office, staffers monitored sentiment graphs climbing at alarming speed. One intern gasped when a new alert popped up. Evelyn Carter's name was now the most searched term on Google in the United States. The communications director leaned over her desk. "Do we have an official statement ready?" "Yes," the intern said. "But, honestly, the story's telling itself." Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in seat 2A, reading through secure messages on her phone. Angela Moore, seated across the aisle, tilted her head toward the window. "You've seen it?" Evelyn's lips quirked. Not a smile exactly, but a knowing acknowledgement. "I've seen enough." She scrolled through her notifications. Requests for interviews from every major network. Invitations to speak before advocacy groups. Messages from law firms offering pro bono support for class action suits against Ultramax. She replied to none of them. "This isn't a media tour," she murmured, almost to herself. "This is a compliance action." In Ultramax headquarters, the PR crisis team was drowning. Every draft statement was shredded by legal, rewritten, and then shredded again by Federal Contracts Counsel. The only constant was the panic meter rising. "We've had over 2,000 customer cancellations in the last 2 hours, a marketing executive reported. "That's before any organized boycott even starts." The CFO, pale and sweating, added, "Our credit line covenants trigger if stock dips below $42 for more than 48 hours. We're already at $44 and falling." Even international partners were being drawn into the storm. A European low-cost carrier announced it was reviewing its code-share relationship with Ultramax. A Middle Eastern flag carrier requested an emergency clarification on the airline's operational stability. By evening in D.C., the issue had crossed into the legislative arena. Representative Maya Torres introduced a resolution calling for a House hearing on bias and discrimination in federally contracted air travel. Within hours, 4 senators announced a parallel push for a Senate hearing. Cable news booked panels of aviation experts, civil rights advocates, and former federal transportation officials to speculate on the outcome. The consensus was brutal. Without immediate sweeping reforms, Ultramax's federal contracts would be suspended or revoked. Angela glanced at Evelyn mid-flight. "They're turning this into a movement," she said. "It was always bigger than me," Evelyn replied quietly. She tapped her phone screen, where a secure message from the FAA's compliance director awaited. "We're prepared to freeze contract renewals pending your formal recommendation." Evelyn locked the phone and leaned back. "Let them feel the wind before the rain hits." On the ground, the crowd of reporters outside Ultramax's Dulles Operations Center had doubled. News choppers hovered overhead. Late-night comedy writers were already scripting monologues about the most expensive upgrade in history. The airline's logo, blue and silver, once a mark of prestige, was now a meme template. One popular version read, "Ultramax, where first class means first to judge you." By the time Flight 447 began its descent into Washington, the hashtag #Skyrights now had been used over 5.3 million times. The original live stream video had been viewed 48 million times across platforms, and a new poll showed that 72% of respondents supported strong federal penalties for airlines found guilty of discrimination. It was no longer just a PR disaster for Ultramax. It was a political and cultural reckoning. Evelyn looked out the window at the lights of the Capitol below. The storm she'd unleashed was no longer contained to one gate, one flight, or one airline. It was national, and it was still gaining strength. The morning after Evelyn Carter's flight landed in Washington, Ultramax Airlines convened an emergency board meeting that would be remembered in corporate history for its sheer scale of capitulation. In the executive conference room, a sleek glass space on the top floor of their Arlington headquarters, CEO Thomas Whitaker sat at the head of the table, flanked by legal counsel, the CFO, and heads of every operational department. The faces were pale, the coffee untouched. On the wall screen, a live feed connected them to the FAA's Federal Contracts Division. In the center frame, the FAA administrator herself appeared, hands folded on the desk. "Mr. Whitaker," she began, "we've reviewed the preliminary compliance plan drafted overnight. It's insufficient." Whitaker nodded stiffly. "Then tell us what will be sufficient." The administrator didn't hesitate. "You will establish a $100 million anti-discrimination and passenger equity fund, effective immediately." The CFO inhaled sharply, already calculating the hit to quarterly earnings. $100 million is the price of continuing to operate under federal contracts, the administrator cut in. "This fund will be used to compensate victims of verified discrimination and to finance industry-leading diversity and sensitivity training." Whitaker glanced at his legal counsel, who gave a minute nod. "Agreed." "That's not all," the administrator continued. "Every single Ultramax employee, from executives to part-time ground crew, will complete mandatory anti-bias training certified by the FAA within 90 days. Heads turned toward HR Director Marlene Frost, who was furiously typing notes. She swallowed hard. "We can implement that." "And finally," the administrator said, "you will deploy a real-time passenger complaint reporting system, directly linked to FAA oversight databases. This means that any discrimination complaint will be visible to federal monitors within minutes of being filed." The IT director shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "That's unprecedented." "It's the new standard," the administrator replied. "And if Ultramax wishes to keep the $1.3 billion annual contract, you will lead the industry in adopting it." Whitaker reached for his pen. "Send over the documents. I'll sign." "Sign them now," the administrator said. "The FAA has transmitted them to your general counsel's secure inbox. We will watch as you execute them." The room fell silent except for the faint rustle of paper as Whitaker scrawled his signature across each page. The $100 million fund, the training mandate, the reporting system. With each flourish of the pen, Ultramax's autonomy shrank. By the final signature, they were no longer just an airline. They were the FAA's most tightly monitored contractor. 2 hours later, Evelyn stood at a lectern in the FAA's press briefing room. The seal of the agency loomed large behind her. "Yesterday's events," she began, "were not an isolated incident. They reflect systemic patterns that must be addressed at the highest level. The FAA will not only oversee Ultramax's compliance with these measures, but will extend them to all carriers holding federal contracts." The room buzzed. A reporter from Reuters raised his hand. "You're saying this is industry-wide?" "Yes," Evelyn replied. "Effective immediately, all federally contracted airlines will be required to establish independent passenger equity funds, implement universal bias training, and connect their complaint systems to the FAA in real time." The implications rippled outward like a stone dropped in a still pond. In boardrooms from Atlanta to Dubai, airline executives received alerts from their compliance officers. FAA announces new federal contractor standards. Lawyers began scanning their existing policies, realizing how far short they fell. In Congress, Senator Vega applauded the announcement on the Senate floor. "This is how you create systemic change, through enforceable, transparent standards, not voluntary pledges." At Ultramax HQ, the implementation machine roared to life. HR scrambled to source certified trainers. IT teams began designing the secure complaint portal, aware that every bug could be scrutinized by FAA auditors. The finance department began transferring the first tranche into the $100 million equity fund. On the tarmac at Dulles, Angela Moore walked alongside Evelyn toward a waiting FAA vehicle. "You've just rewritten the rules for an entire industry." Evelyn's tone was calm, almost understated. "Rules are only as strong as the will to enforce them. Now they'll be enforced in real time." Angela smirked, and Ultramax just became the test case. In New York, advocacy groups celebrated. The National Passenger Rights Coalition issued a statement. For too long, airlines have treated discrimination complaints as PR problems instead of civil rights violations. Today's FAA directive changes that. Dr. Carter's actions have set a precedent that will protect millions of travelers. On TikTok, the teenager from Gate B12 posted a new video. Clips from Evelyn's press conference intercut with the original confrontation captioned, "From Gate to Global Change." It hit 1 million views in 3 hours. In private, some industry veterans were stunned by the speed of it all. FAA directives usually took months, sometimes years, to formalize. But the urgency of the scandal, combined with Evelyn's meticulous documentation, had bypassed bureaucratic inertia. One retired airline CEO told Bloomberg, "This is the fastest I've seen a policy shift in 30 years. They're using Ultramax as the example, and no one wants to be next." Late that afternoon, Whitaker received the FAA's formal letter confirming the continuation of Ultramax's federal contract, conditional on full compliance with the new measures. The letter was blunt. Any breach will trigger immediate termination and a 5-year ban on federal partnerships. He read it twice, then set it down. For the first time in decades, the airline's survival hinged not on fuel prices or market share, but on moral conduct. That evening, Evelyn sat in her office, the city lights of Washington shimmering beyond the window. She reviewed the final compliance plan, every clause reflecting the leverage she'd wielded and the principles she'd insisted on. Angela entered quietly. "The administrator wants you to lead the oversight committee for the industry rollout." Evelyn closed the file. "Tell her I accept." She looked out at the skyline. In less than 48 hours, a single act of public dignity had transformed into a national reform, codified, enforceable, and irreversible. And for the first time in years, the skies felt just a little more just. 1 year later, the transformation was measurable in hard numbers. FAA data showed a 70% decrease in verified discrimination complaints across all federally contracted airlines. Passenger satisfaction surveys reflected record highs. For the first time since the FAA began tracking compliance metrics, every contracted carrier met or exceeded civil rights requirements. The industry had shifted, not through polite memos or voluntary pledges, but through enforceable standards born from one unforgettable confrontation at Gate B12. At FAA headquarters, a new nameplate gleamed outside the corner office. Evelyn Carter, Administrator, Federal Aviation Administration. Her promotion had been a near inevitability after the reforms she championed not only succeeded, but became the global benchmark. On her first day in the role, she addressed the agency staff in the main auditorium. "Aviation isn't just about moving people from one place to another," she said. "It's about how we treat them in the process. A seat on an aircraft is more than a ticket. It's a statement of dignity." The applause was long and sustained. The Ultramax case had entered training curricula for every major airline in the U.S. New hires were required to watch the footage, read the incident report, and complete scenario exercises labeled Flight 447, the Carter Protocol. The footage of Madison Clark pointing at Evelyn with that smirk of disbelief had become a cautionary freeze frame. In classrooms, instructors would pause the video at that exact moment and say, "This is where a career ends," or where it could have been saved. Madison herself had vanished from commercial aviation. After her termination, she took sporadic temp jobs outside the industry. When a reporter from a trade journal found her for a retrospective, she declined to comment, except to say, "I should have listened instead of assumed." Her name lived on as shorthand for professional self-destruction. Among flight crews, "Don't go Madison" became slang for "Don't let your bias write checks your career can't cash." For Evelyn, the year had been relentless. Oversight committees, international speaking engagements, testifying before Congress on the Passenger Dignity Standards Act, a bill modeled after the FAA's new rules. When the act passed with bipartisan support, it locked the reforms into federal law, beyond the reach of any single administration. Her proudest moment, however, came far from Washington. In Atlanta, a young woman named Nia Johnson boarded a regional jet for the first flight of her life. She was nervous, not about flying, but about fitting in the narrow seat and dealing with potential stares. Instead, she was greeted by a flight attendant who offered to adjust the armrest and said, "Let me know if you need anything to be comfortable." It was such a small kindness, but it made Nia smile. Later, she posted about it online, tagging #SkyRightsNow. In her post, she wrote, "I've read about Dr. Carter. I think today I experienced the ripple effect she started. For the first time, I felt like I belonged in the sky." The post went viral, not in outrage, but in joy. Globally, the Carter Protocol spread beyond aviation. Cruise lines, train networks, and even major hotel chains began adopting real-time bias reporting systems linked to independent oversight bodies. Trade publications credited the FAA's framework as the most exportable compliance model of the decade. The International Air Transport Association honored Evelyn with its Humanitarian Leadership Award, citing her extraordinary use of institutional authority to achieve systemic, measurable, and sustainable change. Back in Washington, Evelyn's office walls were lined with thank you letters, some from CEOs who had learned from Ultramax's fall, others from ordinary travelers who finally felt seen. One letter, handwritten in neat cursive, simply read, "You didn't just change the rules, you changed the culture." At the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum, a new exhibit opened, Skies of Justice. The central display, the original leather briefcase Evelyn carried that day, alongside the signed Ultramax compliance agreements and a looping video of her calm, measured words. "Would you like me to call the secretary now, or would you prefer to continue this discussion about my dimensions?" School groups gathered in front of the exhibit, their teachers explaining how one moment of dignity under pressure had reshaped an entire industry. Angela Moore, now FAA's deputy administrator, liked to say the Flight 447 reforms worked because they hit on 3 levels at once: personal accountability, corporate responsibility, and federal enforcement. Any one of those alone might fade, she told a leadership seminar, but together, they're unshakable. As for Evelyn, she never stopped traveling. Her presence on a flight still caused subtle shifts among crews who recognized her. More often than not, the recognition came with a respectful nod, not fear. She had not set out to instill intimidation, but to inspire a standard. On a flight to Los Angeles, a captain came to greet her personally before takeoff. "My crew knows your story," he said. "It's changed the way we work." Evelyn simply replied, "Good, that's the point." When asked in an interview how she wanted the public to remember Flight 447, she didn't mention the contract, the headlines, or the reforms. "I want them to remember that change is possible without shouting, without vengeance. You can hold the line with grace and still move the line forward for everyone." In the end, the legacy of Gate B12 was not just the prevention of another Madison Clark moment. It was the embedding of a principle into the very infrastructure of travel. That dignity was as non-negotiable as safety. And as long as Evelyn Carter held the FAA's top office, that principle would remain at cruising altitude.